Mrs. Kent, would you say that this last telephone call was different from all the other telephone calls you've taken from the accused, Mr. Bennington?
Oh, yes. The others were all nasty suggestions, but I wouldn't listen. I just rang off.
The last time, they were not suggestions he was making, but threats.
I'll always remember it to my dying day. He said, "Just wait. Just wait till you see what happens tonight."
Now, Mrs. Kent, because Mr. Bennington told a friend that he was catching a train at 3:15 to Fulchester, it's very important for us to know whether, in fact, he was on that train on the day of the fire.
But he couldn't have been, because he was talking to me on the telephone at 4:05. I've already told you that.
Yes, of course, I know you have, but as I'm sure you'll understand, it is essential that the jury are completely clear about your evidence.
Oh, well, of course, if you don't believe me, you can ask Miss Joss. I went straight to her when I'd finished on the telephone, and I said, "He's been on again, just now." 4:05 exactly. 5 minutes past 4.
Thank you, Mrs. Kent. I have no further questions, my lord.
Thank you, Mrs. Kent. You may leave the witness box.
Oh, thank you.
You are Edward Bernard Bennington of 14A Ely Street in Fulchester.
Yes, I am Edward Bernard Bennington, and I do live at 14A Ely Street, Fulchester.
Thank you. You've been married to Mrs. Jocelyn Bennington since December 1970.
Yes, December 29th, 1970, 11 o'clock in the morning, Hampstead Registry Office.
Just the questions, thank you, Mr. Bennington.
Sorry.
Your present flat in Fulchester is the one that you and your wife lived in for 4 months after your marriage.
Yes, it is.
Why did you come back here?
Because I was very happy there, I suppose. Happier than I've ever been anywhere else, anyway.
When you moved to London in April 1971, you were no longer happy.
No.
Why was that, Mr. Bennington?
Because she took to spending all her time with another fella.
Now, your wife has told us that you began drinking rather heavily at this time.
Yes, that's right. When in doubt, hit the bottle. That's always been my motto.
Your wife has also told us that you became excessively jealous and aggressive in your behaviour.
It's quite true, yeah.
That, in fact, on 3 occasions you were taken to the police station due to destructive behaviour.
Yes, that's right.
I understand from your wife that the police were always called in by the neighbours.
No, that's not right. Well, I suppose it is in a way, except that she used to call the neighbours and ask them to call the police.
See? When she left you, did she tell you where she was going to live?
Oh, yes. There was no secret about that flat. Odd, really, when you think about it. She must have known I'd try and get her back. I was pretty desperate.
So you took to telephoning her at her new flat?
Oh, yes, a great deal. The bottle tends to lead inevitably to the phone with me. I'm what you might call a telephone freak.
She also said, Mr. Bennington, that you took to laying in wait for her. Outside her flat, outside Mr. Clement's house, outside her hairdresser.
The famous ambushes. No, I didn't even know she had a hairdresser, as a matter of fact. I did go to her house a number of times, mostly at night, but she never let me in. But all this about me standing about, silently looking sinister. I did do it once, but it was to him, not to her. I was outside their flat one night, and they came back quite late and went into her flat together. Now, this was a bit of a shock, you see, because I couldn't quite take it back. I was so jealous for Joss for so long, and here it was actually happening. Anyway, I waited, and he eventually came out.
Did he see you?
Well, he must have seen me. I was standing underneath the street lamp. I don't suppose he knew who I was, but I was doing my silent, sinister act, so he must have seen me. I couldn't think of anything to say, actually.
Did you see him a second time outside her flat?
Yes.
Did you know that he was going to be there?
Well, I had a pretty good idea. I used to ring every night, but she usually took the phone off the hook. But I knew she was there. This particular night, there was no answer, so I kept ringing half a dozen times, and the last time, it's about 1:30 in the morning, the phone was off the hook, so I went round. There was his beautiful Mercedes outside, so I waited again, And when he came out,
What time was that?
oh, I don't know, an hour later, hour and a half maybe. But this time I spoke to him. I introduced myself in rather a formal way, and then I made a few informal suggestions.
Or did you accost him in any physical way?
No, that's not my scene. I just as told you. No matter how drunk I get, I never get involved in fights or punch-ups or anything. But as she said, I tend to take it out on the furniture, never her.
It was shortly after the second time you saw Mr. Clements, Mrs. Bennington took you to court.
Yes, first the injunction and then the divorce papers. I expect they worked all that out together.
And then she moved to her present flat in Barnes.
Yes,
Did you make any attempt to find her new flat?
every attempt I could think of. I must say she made a very good job of covering up her tracks. Yes, that's when I decided to move back here to Fulchester. Richard had fixed this TV commission for me, and I thought I'd better get stuck into some work. I'd been doing nothing for so long. Drinks, very bad for me. The less I work, the more I drink, you see.
But you let up on drinking when you came back to Fulchester.
Yes. Oh, well, not really. I did do some work, but when things got bad, I'd drink.
And telephone Mr. Clements.
Oh, yes, frequently. Although, as you've heard, it got to be telephoning Nanny.
And the letters, Mr. Bennington, it was you who sent those?
Yes.
Why?
Oh, for God's sake, that's the thing I do. That's just what I do. When I get drunk, I behave very badly. I get jealous and lonely and angry. I just behave badly.
Mr. Bennington, we are here today to determine whether your bad behaviour stretched far enough to include arson. Did you or did you not put petrol through Mr. Clements' letterbox and ignite it after writing the words, "Stop screwing my wife," in blue paint on the pavement?
No, I didn't.
You don't sound very convinced.
What difference does it make how I sound? I know I didn't do it. Maybe you did too.
Mr. Bennington, your knowing that you're not guilty or my knowing it is not the point. You are being tried by a jury, and it is the jury who have to decide.
Look, I told you from the first place, I didn't even want a barrister. I didn't ask you to defend me. It was all his idea. Legal aid for the pauper.
Whether you wanted a barrister or not, Mr. Bennington, you've got one. Me.
Right. I didn't do it, chaps. I'm not an arsonist. I didn't do it.
Mr. Bennington, please refrain from histrionics. Just answer your counsel's questions.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Bennington, why is it that you didn't include your wife in your own social life? Why didn't you introduce her to your friends, Mr. Frost, for example?
He wouldn't have liked her. She's not a very nice woman.
But you love your wife, do you not?
Yes, I love her. But she's not a very nice woman.
The case of the Queen against Bennington will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.